Hello, I'm the Code Whisperer. In this next installment of JavaScript Explained with Game of Thrones, we're going to explain arrays using the numerous members of House Stark. So this video builds on the previous video about Jon Snow, so if you are at all uncertain, do watch that video before watching this one. So an array. What is an array? Well, the Starks make a good example of something to be held in an array because there's so many of them. So an array is basically a pointer in memory that refers to a list of things. The order of the things don't change, and in JavaScript, the things can all be anything. And of course, there are more Starks than just this. There's no limit to the amount of things that can be held inside an array, so you really have a huge amount of power when you're using them to write code. Let's jump into an example. Here I am, I'm inside Chrome. I have my developer tools open with F12. Let's make an array. So in JavaScript, the easiest way to make an array is just make an open square bracket, close square bracket. And you can see it responds with an array because that's what I've made. So you make an array by putting an opening bracket and put any number of elements inside of it, separated by commas. So a really simple array is the array 1, 2, 3. And that responds with the array 1, 2, 3. So the useful thing about arrays is that they can be held in memory and remember lists of things for us. So let's make ourselves an array of Starks. I'll say let Starks. And then I'll make them equal to an opening, closing bracket like this, the square kind. And I'll use ticks. And I'll just write the names of all the Starks. And I'll press enter. And now I have my array of Starks in memory. So if I type Starks, here is my list of Starks. Pretty cool. So there are really 10 and 1 different kind of things you can do with arrays. We don't have time to go over all of them in this video, but we are going to talk about 1 or 2. Now, arrays would be useless if you couldn't change the data in them in any way, if they were just stuck forever how they were. So one thing you can do is you can add new elements to arrays. In JavaScript, the magic word for that is push. And you can add any number of new elements to arrays by using the push keyword. So I can say starks.push. And I'll put the string Benjen, everyone's favorite Stark. It returns a number 8, which is the length of my array of Starks. If I type Starks, there's the list of Starks with Benjen added on the end. As you can see, this actually changed my original array. So any variables that point to this array in memory are going to be changed as well. So let me demonstrate. I'll make another array and I'll call it also Starks. And I'll make that equal to Starks. So if I look at that, it's just the same array. Now if I say starks.push and I'll add, let's say Brandon, good old Brand the Builder. If I look at my Starks array, there's Brandon at the end. But if I look at also Starks, it also has Brandon. That's because Starks and also Starks are both just pointers to the same array in memory. You don't actually copy an array when you create a new pointer for it. And this is an important detail to remember when working with JavaScript. Now you can access individual array elements by taking the name of the array and afterwards putting a set of square brackets. Now you can put any integer inside these square brackets and it'll retrieve the appropriate element, starting at 0. So if I type 4, it returns Rob. And if I type 0, it returns Rickon. If I type 9, I get undefined because it starts at 0, which means the highest element of the array actually has the value 8. So if I type 8, there's Brandon. Now you can also change elements inside an array by referring to them by their index like this and then saying equals. So I can say Starks8 equals Bran the Builder. Now if I look at Starks, instead of Brandon, we have Bran the Builder. And I'll just change that back to Brandon. It's just that easy. All right, so we're now going to jump right into array maps. Some people think they're really confusing, but I think they're so important that I'm going to teach them to you pretty much the first thing right after I've taught you arrays. So an array map takes an array and turns it into something else. So look at it kind of like an instruction manual. Like, let's say I give you a big carton of eggs, 12 eggs, and I say to you, I want you to make me 12 little omelets out of these 12 eggs. You say to me, how do I do that? Well, I'll tell you, here's how you make one egg into one omelet, and then you do that 12 times and give me the omelets. That is the exact same thing as an array map, but this will be easier to understand if we demonstrate, so let's jump into a code example. So if we type the name of the array, Starks, and put a dot, it'll give us all the functions that are built in. You should take a look at them in a minute, but the one we're interested in right now is map. So inside the map, we'll put an arrow function. Arrow functions are also kind of advanced, but just copy exactly what I've written, and you'll be fine. This is a great thing to learn early as they're super useful. So inside these brackets, we're going to write a fat arrow, a fat right-facing arrow. On the left side, we're going to assign a name for whatever the value in the array is at the time it's running. So we'll just call it name. The first time this runs, name will be equal to Rickon, the second time Bran, and the third time area, and so forth. Now on the right side, we'll have whatever should be in the new map, the array map. So I'll put a string, a template string, and then I'll put a $sign and 2 curly brackets. Whatever's in these curly brackets will be interpreted as JavaScript, but put right into the string. So here I'll say name, and then after that I'll add the word Stark. So we're going to make a map of names and turn all the names into the name with Stark after it. I'll add that and press enter. Now I really do want you to do this along at home with me, because by doing it you'll understand it a lot more easily. So check it out. It outputs the same array, but now they all have Stark at the end. Rickon Stark, Bran Stark, Arya Stark. It would have been a lot of work for me to add the word Stark to each element of those arrays. So you can see why maps are so useful and why I like them. Now if we type Starks again, notice the original array hasn't changed. Maps make a copy of the array. So let's try it one more time. Let's do something silly. Let's say starks.map with the same thing above, but instead of Stark, let's say Lannister. Ho ho, that's kind of sinister looking, isn't it? It's all the Starks with the last name Lannister. So arrays have a lot of useful features, map being the most useful of which in my opinion, and we won't get a chance to talk about all of them. But one more we're going to talk about is filter. So as a map creates a copy of an array where there's the same number of elements and all the elements are changed or transformed in some way from the original. Filters take an array and return an array of the same size or smaller, which is basically the old array with some elements removed or filtered out. Let's have a look. So we got our Starks, and they don't have last names on them because map makes a copy of the array and doesn't change the original. So we'll say starks.filter. And we'll write name and then a fat arrow. So whatever is on the right side of this arrow is going to be evaluated. And if it's true, then the new array is going to have that name. And if it's false, it's not. So we'll say name.length, which for strings refers to how many characters are in the string. So Rickon would be 6 and Bran would be 4, etc. And we'll say is greater than 4. And as you can see, we have a shortened list. If we look at the original Starks array, it hasn't changed, but we could save the new array in memory by saying let new array equal, and then we'll say starks.filter. And now I have my new array, which is shorter, and my existing array of Starks, which is a full length. Filters aren't too fancy, but they're a super useful feature of JavaScript, which, I mean, once you get used to them, you'll find yourself using them every day. So yeah, seriously guys, there's so many things you can do with JavaScript arrays. There really aren't enough Starks or even houses in the whole 7 kingdoms to do enough examples for them. So I'm gonna leave you with one more example, and then if you really want to see the whole shebang on arrays, like every feature, let me know in the comments, and I might make a video for that, or I might even just make a Udemy course and then toss everyone who commented a free ticket to get in or something like that. So let me know if you want to hear more about arrays. But for the last one, we're going to talk about looping through array elements. Now, looping is kind of the most general thing. For each element in the array, you're going to run some kind of arbitrary piece of code. It's really similar to map and filters. In fact, map and filter is both a kind of for each loop. It's really hard to compose a map without using a for each. So they're pretty simple, so let's just jump right into it, and then when we're done, you'll be the king of the land of arrays, king or queen. And we can say starks.forEach with a big E. And inside this, we'll put a function. Instead of an arrow function, we'll just put a regular function for this one, even though arrow functions are kind of better. And the argument is going to be the name of the Stark, of course. Now, for each time this block of code runs, it'll run once for each element in the array. So whatever we put here will happen 9 times, and it'll get name as a parameter. So the simplest thing is we can just say console log. And we'll put a template string and say $ curly brackets, name, shouts for Winterfell. Notice I'm putting the double quotes inside the ticks. That's one of the reasons why ticks are better, because when you're using ticks, you can use double quotes and single quotes inside your tick, no problem. So I'll press enter, and you see it console logs for every member of the array this thing. So it says Area shouts for Winterfell, John shouts for Winterfell. Everyone is shouting for Winterfell. Now, the thing about for each loops is stuff like maps and filters do a lot of the stuff for each loops already do. So generally, you should kind of stay away from for each loops unless you're sure that there's no other existing construct that is there that works. All right, so I'd really love to talk about arrays all day, but then we'd be here for literally hours. So let me know in the comments if you have any questions or if you want to learn more about arrays using all Game of Thrones examples. And I've been the Code Whisperer. Have yourself a super day.